Okay, thank you, Mr. Turk. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is a presentation just to run through, really, the main points linked to the Key Stage 2 assessments that are happening at the beginning of May, and just to make sure that you're all aware and any questions that you may have had are answered, and if not, you know that we are all here to answer any questions on the door or through the phones. So, Mr. Turk, if you'd flick to the first slide. So what are the SATs? So the SATs are standardised assessments which test the children on their knowledge all the way through Key Stage 2. So it's not just Year 6 content that is tested, it's also Year 3, Year 4, Year 5 and Year 6 content. They take place over 4 days, starting on the Monday and moving all the way through until the Thursday. And we start on the 13th of May this year. The Friday is normally a day where they can come in and they can relax and almost celebrate the fact that they've got through them with a smile on their faces. So the SATS papers consist of grammar, punctuation and spelling, which are two separate papers. Spelling sits on its own and then the grammar paper and punctuation is afterwards. And then we have a reading paper on the Tuesday. And then there are 3 maths papers where the scores are all added together. The first being the arithmetic paper. And then there are 2 reasoning papers that focus on problem solving and reasoning after that. Writing is assessed by us teachers using a teacher assessment framework, and throughout the year we collate evidence that then backs up our judgment come the end of Year 6. The Key Stage 2 SATs will be taken on set dates, and that is across the United Kingdom. If your child is absent on the day, then you would need to ring us immediately and they would be able to take the test, but it would have to be within 5 school days of the rest of the UK taking them, and they would need to be somewhat isolated from any of their peers who have already sat the tests. Okay, so when and how are the SATs completed? So the SATs are completed in the normal school day under exam conditions. The children aren't allowed to talk to each other. They are sat spaced apart from one another. The tests are handed out at the beginning of the test. No teacher sees them. No member of staff sees them. They are opened in the room. They are handed out and then they are collected again. And the children are not allowed to talk until the papers have left the room. They are then sent away by a courier and they are marked externally by specially trained teachers. The results are then sent to school mid-July, and they will be reported to you at the end of the school year in the report envelope alongside the written report from the 3 of us. No test lasts longer than 60 minutes. The longest test is the reading test, but all the children have been practicing, and as class teachers, we pace them through and make sure that they are moving through at a steady but a managed pace throughout the test. And here it just runs through how long each test is. So the spelling, punctuation and grammar. So the grammar and punctuation lasts for the 45 minutes. The spelling is an untimed paper, approximately lasting around 15 minutes, but can take as little or as long as needed. The reading paper is the longest of them all, which is a 60-minute paper where they read over 3 separate texts and then answer questions to make sure that we understand their comprehension. And then the last 3 papers, the arithmetic, maths being 30 minutes, the reasoning being 40 minutes, and then the reasoning 3 being 40 minutes. So the specific arrangement for the SATs. So some children have additional needs, and we basically have to meet certain guidance set out by the standards in the testing agency, which means that they will either be granted or not granted. That is done through a specific website, which me and Mr. Tuck do, and this links to extra time, where they may need a reader, a scribe, a transcribe, anything that allows them to access the texts to the same level as their peers. It does not give them an advantage. And we will let you know if your child has been awarded the extra time on Friday with a letter sent home with them. Children with EHCPs are automatically granted the 25% additional time, except for the spelling paper, as I mentioned, which is strictly not timed, so that will take as long or as short as we choose. Children who need modified large print or braille versions of the test, they are automatically also allowed 100% extra time. We do use rest breaks and sensory snacks just to make sure the children are calm and there's no cognitive overload, and they are very well cared for throughout the week, like they are every day at Grovelands Primary School.
So in terms of our organisation for the mornings of SATS, we will be taking SATS in a wave approach this year. That means that the classes will be split into kind of 2 groups. Wave 1 will go first thing in the morning, while wave 2 are completing activities. We do keep them separate, so there's no discussion in between the waves. And then wave 2 will go after wave 1, while wave 1 relax, and then so on. So wave 1 normally starts about 9 a.m. and then wave 2 is approximately 10:30 a.m. So it's all done before lunchtime. We will be hosting kind of like a breakfast in the mornings to make sure the children are in on time. They're all accounted for. They've all had a good hearty breakfast, ready to go. They'll take the test, and then we'll do some really nice kind of sporting activities mixed in with a bit of revision, ready for the next day. If your child attends breakfast club, that is fine, and they will be brought over to the school where we're hosting the kind of year 6 SATS breakfast at the appropriate time, so that can still go ahead as normal. The results of the SATs are marked, so that, as Amy said earlier, they are marked externally, and once they're marked, the test will be given the following score. So there'll be a raw score, which is the total number of marks achieved for each paper kind of individually. Then there'll be a scaled score, which I will talk about in just a second, and then a judgment on if the national standard has been met. So there's kind of 3 layers to marking the SATs. After marking each test, the external marker will convert the raw score to a scaled score. Even though the tests are made to the same standard each year, the questions must be different. So this means the difficulty of the test may vary. So they need the scaled scores to ensure that there's an accurate comparison of performances over time. So a scaled scores range from 80 to 120. And a scaled score of 100 or more shows the pupil is meeting the national standard, but we'll give you all of this information nearer the time to when you receive the results so that everyone can be on the same page and understand. So, SPAG papers, or grammar, punctuation and spelling, they consist of 2 papers, and these are both completed on Monday the 13th of May. They are the first one we tackle. Paper 1 focuses on the 3 elements of grammar, punctuation and spelling, or GPS, or kind of SPAG, and the paper lasts for 45 minutes. And then paper 2, like we mentioned earlier, is the spelling test. It's 20 words. We read the word out to the children. We then read it within a sentence, repeat the word, and we go kind of through the course of the paper that way. It's not a set amount of time, but we do give them as much time as they need. So paper 1 in a bit more depth. They've been working so hard with us and with each other to develop and secure their knowledge of lots of the technical, quite tricky grammar and punctuation, definitions and so on. So the tests focus on grammatical terms, word classes, functions of sentences, combining words, phrases, clauses, verb forms, tenses, punctuation, vocab, formality of writing. So there'll be lots of different kind of questions that they'll be asked that surround a variety of those. The test requires a range of answer types, but it does not have kind of long paragraph sentence answers. So as you can see, here are some of the answer types that we'll get. So you might get tick boxes, short 1-word answers, or they'll be rewriting a sentence with the correct punctuation. There'll be tables and grids to kind of identify what type of sentence something is or what grammatical element it might include. A big key thing here that we've been reminding the children, if it says tick 1, please tick 1. If it says write 1 word, please write 1 word. So those are the kind of messages we've been drilling into them, but they've been fantastic so far. And paper 2 spelling, kind of like I mentioned earlier, that looks at all of the different spelling techniques and approaches and rules that we have been teaching them throughout their primary education. We use Sounds Right to help us learn different ways and kind of forms of spelling words. And this is, like I said again, 20 words, all from the year 5-6 spelling list that we ask them, and they just have to simply copy the word in the correct spelling. We write down the word in the correct spelling, sorry. For this paper, a big top tip is really clearly write out your word. You know, you don't have to do joined up. If it helps you make your writing clearer, that's absolutely fine. But this is really, we need to see exactly what letters you are writing on that line. Here's a little snapshot of the spelling paper. So it just looks like this. They'll have a sentence with a line for the missing word. And as a teacher, we'll have the word, then the full sentence and the word again. So we have a really clear script to follow to mean that they're hearing the word the amount of times that they need to.
So the reading is the longest test on Tuesday, the 14th of May. It lasts for 60 minutes and it's out of 50 marks. Now, the children are expected to read 3 different texts and then answer around 12 to 14 questions on each text. We normally sort of pace them through, so it's 20 minutes per text. Now, this is probably a test where stamina really comes into it, and word fluency and reading, and making sure that they understand not only the vocabulary, but the underlying meanings and the inference that is tried to be portrayed through the author. It is a paper that we've practiced from the beginning, and they actually are really, really confident. It's one of our strongest papers across year 6, and they are really, really avid and well-skilled readers. They get the opportunity to try and explain the meaning of the words in a context. They make inferences, looking at almost like an iceberg, and you look at the clues at the top, but what is the underlying meaning? We identify and sequence certain parts of the text. We make comparisons, and all of these skills they've been practicing in a variety of different ways throughout the year. Here are some examples. So, for example, questions 1 to 11 are about the parsnip. So the children are very well guided through the paper. Sometimes the paper asks them to look in specific places, and sometimes it's asking for a number or a place, and sometimes it's asking for a little bit more of a detailed answer. Here are some more. Just run your eyes over. And this is to give 2 ways that he makes these changes to his performance. So you need to find 2 different ways, and we really focus on finding the 2 strongest ways and making sure that those 2 ways don't overlap. You're not actually saying the same thing. And they often look at the mark scheme, because I think the children find it interesting to see where it is that they gain a mark and where it is they might lose a mark. And every single time, and I'm sure you guys agree, that when we started to do our mocks now, they're like, how many did I get? How many did I get? So that they know every single mark matters. Another one, a bit more of a long-winded answer. This is a 3-mark question. We always say we're not scared of 3-mark questions. The more information we put down, the more we refer to the text, the more likely we are to get our 3-mark answers. They've got really, really good at being concise and being really, really methodical when looking through the text and finding the answers that are going to gain them the 3 marks. Since the current testing formation of the SATS began in 2016, there has been a tendency for 3 types of questions to be most popular. Now, in the 2022 SATS reading paper, 10% of the marks can be gained from answering questions involving and explaining the meaning of words, which is why reading at home is something that as a school we really advocate that children should be reading every single day, so that they start to build up their vocabulary bank in their brains and they start to understand the whole wealth of words. 38% of the marks could be gained from answering involving retrieving. So that's going and finding the answer, pulling it straight out the text and writing it down, and making sure that you record that information really, really accurately. And then the 44% of the marks were actually linked to inference, which is probably one of the most trickiest skills, albeit probably the skill we practice the most, which is where you become the detective. You look for the clues, and then you look for the deeper meaning underneath the surface, and you draw conclusions from that. So when reading with your child, if possible, and if you'd like any support on this, please don't ever hesitate to come and see myself, Mrs. Ailing, or Miss Calder, if you'd like any sort of sentence stems to help when you're reading at home.
Okay, and then obviously we then come to the maths part of the SATS. The maths assessments are consisted of 3 three different tests. So the first one being arithmetic and the second and third both being reasoning. We will do the arithmetic and reasoning paper 2 both on the Wednesday. We will then do reasoning 3 on the Thursday. So the arithmetic paper, this consists of a total of 40 marks and it lasts for about 30 minutes. The test does cover the 4 operations, so addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. The kids have practiced this every single day. They've done really, really, really well. They know that there's a little area for them to work out. The most important thing is to make sure that the answer goes into the answer box. Making sure that they're forming the numbers correctly is the most important, but they've been doing really, really well. So that's the arithmetic paper. This is just an example of how they might set it out. So the squares in the middle are for them working out, and then obviously they've got the answer box within there as well. Then paper 2 and paper 3, which is the reasoning. So basically the difference between arithmetic and reasoning. Arithmetic is purely number calculation. Reasoning is more problem solving and word problems. So obviously we will do the reasoning paper 2 after the arithmetic on the Wednesday. Paper 3 we'll do on the Thursday. They both consist of 35 marks each, and they both take 40 minutes to complete. And these tests kind of range anywhere between the number and place value to statistics, to measurement, to algebra, ratio, all the other areas that we've been practicing throughout the year, and obviously that they've practiced throughout their whole entire primary. And again, here you can see some examples. So it's a lot more worded questions, picking it out, figuring out what they need to do and writing the answer into the box. Sometimes there are areas, I think if you go to the next page, Mr. Tuck, there are some areas that they can kind of show they're working out. It's really important to kind of make sure they justify their reasoning and justify their understanding as to how they got to an answer, and just making sure they put the answers down.
So supporting your child in preparing for SATS. So firstly, a positive attitude goes a long way, and they certainly have shown that throughout the year. We've given them lots and lots of encouragement and support, as we have done. And I'm sure you have done that as well at home, so we don't need to tell you that. So top tips, we'd ask that you don't use past papers, because we like to use those in school to prepare the children. Obviously, talk to any 3 of us as your class teacher. If you have any concerns or worries about your child, they are the utmost of our priority, and their mental health and well-being comes way, way before their academic achievement. We want them to be happy and we want them to be healthy, and that is the most important. So please do come and speak to us if any of them are feeling anxious or worried. Give your child a quiet, distraction-free place to complete their homework, although we've only got 3 weeks left of homework before we start the big show, which I know they're all very excited about. Give your child time to go outside, reduce screen time, just basically keep them as chilled and as stress-free as possible, drinking and eating well, getting plenty of sleep, and maybe have something nice and fun planned on the weekend before SATS. Just help them to relax and not spend the whole weekend winding themselves up about something that we know they're going to succeed in anyway.
So a few things to remember. Number 1, SATS focus on what the children know about maths and English. They obviously don't highlight the other amazing achievements or skills or passions that your children have from a breadth of subjects, not only at school but outside of school. And they also won't highlight their amazing personalities and characteristics. They also don't tell the whole stories. So their results may say they did or did not meet a certain standard, but it doesn't mean that these fully reflect, the thresholds change every year according to the overall national performance. So it was classed as meeting the expected standard, but this year might not be the same as last year, and next year might not be the same as this year. So we just have to take it as it comes. And lastly, SAT's only 4 days out of their whole primary school career. And reality, there's 1 or 2 papers each day, no more than 60 minutes, and the rest of the day is used for revision and kind of just getting them outside, reducing any stress, and foundation lessons. So it is a full-on week for them, but we try to do as much as we can to de-stress them and keep reminding them it's really good to try their best and want to do their best, but it isn't the end of the world.
And they quite often say at the end, was that it?
Yeah, it's not that bad.
I'm like, yeah, that's it. There's nothing to worry about. So what to do if you're worried about your child? So SATS do and can, induce a certain degree of worry or anxiety, but there is, of course, a tipping point. And should any, anxiety or any symptoms like that start to affect your child, then please do come and see us. There's a list there that you can read through. And we always send this poem home, a poem for Year 6 by Sparky. Don't get stressed, just do your best. Remember, you've been blessed with skills that SATS can't test. And it is a snapshot. It is a less than an hour snapshot, which does not, like Miss Calder say, give you a full representation of the whole child. So if any of the above are evident, SATS may be causing it like an excessive degree of anxiety, your child might benefit from some additional support. So this isn't about removing the reality of SATS, but rather equipping them with the ability to better cope with the situation. So please do touch base with any three of us, or Mr. Tuck or Mrs. Coleman, if you are worried about anything. So advice for the children, listen to your teacher, which they have been doing all year. They've been fantastic. The adults you work with all want you to do your best. We have absolute belief in them. We'd like them to get lots and lots of sleep, eat well. This will help rest their brain, read all the questions carefully, which we will go over at the beginning of every day to avoid their silly mistakes. But they really, really have got better at checking. And it sounds silly to say, but it's actually a skill in itself. Be able to go back through a paper and check it, and it's something that they've all been really, really practicing. They're not to panic. There may be questions that you can't think the answer of, but we know to circle it and go back, and not to waste too much time on one question when we could complete another 8 questions, and we can go back to that question at the end of the paper. It's often better to write something rather than nothing, so have an educated guess. We've been practicing educating a guess. And remember that the SATs last for 4 days out of your whole life, and it is not going to change anything about moving forward. You can still have the job you want to have and succeed at whatever it is that you want to. So stay focused in class. You don't have loads of extra studying to do at home. And that was a Year 7 pupil's advice from last year. Stay focused. And don't do too much more at home. We work them exceptionally hard in Year 6. So when they get home at 3:15, they deserve to kick their shoes off, sit down, have a snack, and relax. So that brings us to the end of our SATS information presentation. Does anybody have any questions, Mr. Tucker? Or do feel free to unmute yourself and shout them out if you would like to.
Okay, well, no questions have come through, Miss Cat, and no questions shouted out there. And there is one just popping up, but I just, before addressing that, wanted to say that I thought it was a really informative presentation that you've done, and you've really been through very thoroughly. So thank you so much for that. From my own point of view, I wanted to say that, the children have worked so hard this year, and we're already really proud of them, even before the SATs have started, for their hard work and their progress. That will be even more true after the SATs. And actually, however they do, whether they meet the expected standard or not, they have all made fantastic progress. And so we should hold that progress up and make sure they know that we are really, really proud of them, whatever the result. I will just share a couple of questions. So first of all, Roberta has asked about what happens if they don't meet the expected standard. I would say that really the SATs are about testing how well we do as a school in terms of enabling the children to make progress. This will not affect their lives. If they do not meet the expected standard, well, that's okay. It means the secondary school they go to might know they need a little bit of a leg up, but actually as they move on and they go through secondary schools, it will not affect their opportunities. So you really do not need to worry about that at all. Secondly, so Amy's asked a question about decimal points in answers. So should children use decimal points in answers or comments to show thousands?
So we teach them at school that obviously decimal points are integral to understanding the true value of a number. So yes, we use decimal points. However, we have asked that they don't use commas, just because for some children that may find, under stress or with a more complex question, when we start adding commas in, 1, they could look like a 1, they could look like a 7. One, you can make a decimal look like a comma or a comma look like a decimal. And actually, a number is still correct without commas. So to reduce the risk of possible inaccuracies, we do not use commas in year 6 when we are sitting our SATs. And we've kind of said that to them all the way through year 6, but we do definitely need to use decimals.
Wonderful. That makes perfect sense. Thank you so much. That is the end of the questions that we have there. A reminder that you can still ask questions if you think of them later. So please do let us know if you have any questions. I would just like to say thank you again to the Year 6 team, not only for this fantastic presentation, but for working so hard with the pupils all year to ensure they feel super confident and ready going into the week. So thank you very much to you all.
Thank you, Mr. Tuck.
And we will see you all very soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.